So I'm just going to do a little bit of background and introduction to the presenter, and then Shannon's going to lead the workshop. So there's a small presentation, but then we really want to, work on the model that she's going to talk about. But I just also want to note that, so I'm Treena Delormier, and I'm from Kahnawake. And my grandfather is Chuck Sky, and he actually gave pole bean seeds to a lot of people, as I've learned over the years, and Stephen being one of them. And he's the one who taught me how to plant. He had a garden, he had the cold room and the potato bin, and I used to hate having to go down into the basement, the crawl space, to get potatoes because you never knew what was in there or crawling around. So that was my first appreciation for food and the importance of planting. And it was only when I started going back to the longhouse that I learned some seed songs. So when I plant, I also sing in my garden. So it's nice to hear that those things are coming back too. I am also a dietitian by training. I went to McGill University and I'm a licensed dietitian. But I did a lot of my work with Kahnawake School's diabetes prevention program. It was a big community effort to put a program in the schools, change the school environment, change the community environment so that we can show and demonstrate for how kids to be healthy from the time, then stay healthy so they don't develop type 2 diabetes. And in that project, part of it was research. So is this program working? And learning how is it having an impact on what the kids are eating, on the family. So many research projects came out of that. And I became involved with research because of that project. And I did a master's project actually with the Cree in Wiminji, looking at how their food, their traditional food was changing over time. So I did dietary studies to show that, yes, the elders were eating more food, traditional food, than the younger adult generations. But even though they were only eating a small amount of food, when you did the nutrient analysis of it, that small amount of food made a big difference. So I was happy to be able to do that work in their community. And so now I'm a full-time researcher. I have a job at McGill University. I'm in the School of Human Nutrition. I'm an associate professor, so that means I have students that are interested in doing projects, and I train them how to do research. And Shannon is one of them. She's going to introduce herself, but she expressed she was interested to learn more about the kind of research I do, and she took my class. I teach a class called Public Health Nutrition, where we talk about the importance of indigenous food systems to nutrition and health and well-being. So today she's going to be, the presentation is focusing on the work that she did. And this work was identified from a number of meetings that many of you were involved with, or some of you were involved with, when we were discussing food security in Kahnawake. Does everybody have enough food to be healthy and have an active life? And if they don't, how are we addressing that? But we're also addressing food security in a food sovereignty approach. This importance of us practicing our traditional food, not just talking about it, but taking action, and also the changes that are required to support that. So my research is in that area. And so this project, because there were so many projects and interesting programs happening in Kahnawake, and because it was the pandemic, or we're getting through the pandemic, there was many food programs to ensure everyone had food that they needed during that challenging time. And the discussion was it would be helpful to have a way to coordinate these many projects and programs that are gardening to Meals on Wheels to food banks to many different kinds. And so the idea was, if we could produce a system, what does our food system look like in Kahnawake if it reflects our values, if it reflects the way we want to eat, what we want to produce. So Shannon's project, and she'll explain more in detail, basically looked at designing a process that would be very collaborative and reflect the community's ways of seeing things and understandings to produce a representation of what our food system looks like or could look like when we only focus on food production, local food production. There were many other issues that we could have modeled, but this was the one that had the highest priority. And so today she's going to be talking a little bit about how she did that, but most of the time is going to be spent on us looking at what was produced and talking about action and where we can do actions based on taking into consideration how the community represents their food production, how we represent our food production model. So with that, I'm going to let Shannon introduce herself, and she'll take it from there.
All right. Thank you, Treena. So hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Udy. As Treena said, I was a student, a master's student at McGill University. I pursued my master's after doing the dietetics program, so I'm also a dietitian, because I had an interest in Indigenous health and nutrition research. I am Métis. I grew up on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, but I really was brought to, the Montreal area to pursue studies. I'm currently working with Treena as a research assistant at McGill and also at the Kahnawake School's Diabetes Prevention Program. So today I'd like to introduce the project that I did as part of my master's thesis research. And this really focused on building a community-based participatory food systems approach to promote food security and food sovereignty. So as Treena mentioned, the project really began in 2021. Had the opportunity to participate in some of the food security and food sovereignty working group meetings that were going on just around the time of the pandemic. And the group had identified the need for a holistic plan that could guide collective efforts toward food security and food sovereignty. And so this project grew from the partnership with the Kahnawake School's Diabetes Prevention Program and brought together community members, leaders in food security and health, and McGill University researchers, and myself as a student. So this project follows KSDPP's Code of Research Ethics, and it aimed to create a vision and shared understanding of Kahnawake's food system. And this vision could then the hope was that it could guide community action planning based on local values and priorities. So the first workshop that we held was called Envisioning the Future of Kahnawake's Food System, and this was the starting point of the project. So the goal was to create a shared vision for Kahnawake's food system. So in May of 2023, 16 Kahnawake Rono came together in Kahnawake to share their hopes and priorities for the future of the food system. So we started with opening words, a shared meal, and then got to know one another. During the workshop, participants talked about the past and present state of Kahnawake's food system and imagined what it could look like in the future. So everyone wrote down their ideas and shared them in small groups. From these conversations, common themes came up, and these themes helped to shape a shared vision for Kahnawake's food system and identify community priorities. So there were a few community priorities identified from the workshop. I won't read them all, but the top priority, I should say, that was chosen to focus on for the modeling portion of the project was supporting community food production. So this was decided through a priority ranking activity. So community members ranked each of those priorities based on urgency, so like how important it was to address right away, as well as feasibility, so how easy or hard it would be to address. Community food production, as well as access to land, was expressed as the most urgent needs, though both were also seen as hardest to address. So we chose to focus on community food production as the top priority for focused action because it could support many of the other priorities. So participants described community food production as how we produce local and traditional foods through activities like gardening, planting, growing with greenhouses or hydroponics, animal farming, harvesting, hunting, and fishing. After this first workshop, we created the shared vision for Kahnawake food system. The next step was figuring out how to turn that vision into real actions. So to do this, we used a process called group model building, and this took place in July 2023. So 11 community members came together and mapped out how the food system works and explored ways to strengthen it. We focused on community food production, and this helped us see how everything was connected and how we could start taking steps to create the changes that we all want to see. Group model building focuses on complex problems. So a food system, for example, is like an elephant seen by a group of people in the dark. Each person feels a different part of it and describes it based on their perspective. One might feel the trunk and say it's like a snake. Another feels a leg and says it's like a tree. So on their own, each description is incomplete, but together they reveal the whole elephant. So these workshops used systems modeling, and that's like turning on the light to see how all the parts fit together. So it creates a map of the system showing how things like food production, sharing, culture, and policies all connect. So group model building is the actual process of that to turn on the light. So it brings people together. Through workshops, people share their knowledge, map the food system, and identify challenges and opportunities for change. So we focused on community food production, exploring how it connects to other parts of Kahnawake food system. And this process is what built that shared understanding to guide action toward long-term food security and sovereignty. This was the resulting model showing Kahnawake food production system. So here's a quick overview of how to guide it, but really, like Treena said, we're gonna be looking at the model in more detail as more like a workshop format in a bit. So the model shows key elements. So each part is an important piece of the system. So for example, producing food locally or food and knowledge sharing. The arrows of the model show how different parts affect each other. So a positive arrow means that factors move in the same direction. So an example is increasing landfill practices means there's more contaminated sites. A negative arrow means the factors move in opposite directions. So the example I have here is increasing contaminated sites means there's less land available for food production. So the model also includes loops that show how different parts work together. So reinforcing loops are indicated with an R. Reinforcing loops means increasing changes make them stronger. So for example, social harmony. A strong connection to lifestyles was related to the shifting female gender roles, which enhances people's wanting to practice traditional responsibilities of planting and producing foods. Balancing loops are similar to reinforcing loops, but they push back changes and create balance over time. So the loops have labels and they highlight themes like land availability or cultural connectedness. So this model is available by a link, and it's on the sheet here if you want to type it in your phones or computers. But you can click on any label in the model to learn more about it. So the different colors make it easier to spot the subsystems of the model. So green is land management, blue is community food security, orange is community participation, and purple is social and cultural aspects. So the point of the model is to really help us understand the current system and find ways to create positive change. So I think now we were hoping to move into a little bit of an activity to look at the different parts of the model and start looking at different actions and action ideas. So we're going to split everybody into 4 groups, and everybody's going to have a chance to look at the model a little bit closer, as well as one of the themes. I have a sheet that kind of goes over what I kind of just explained, but like how to read the model and the different conventions there, as well as a description of each theme, and then on the other side, the action ideas that were proposed by the participants in the workshops. So what we're going to do is take a look at the model and the different themes and start looking at how to take action on the priorities that were identified. So for each action and theme, we're looking at, who can contribute to this action. So like personally, how can I contribute? Or who in our community or local organizations or surrounding communities can support this action? Available resources. So what resources do we have? So for example, if it's a community garden, do we need funding? Do we need supplies? What resources do we still need? So for example, if it was a community, healthy eating community food preparation workshop, we might need a kitchen space, a communal kitchen space. And then the immediate actions that might need to take place in order to reach that priority. And then finally, my next step, what will I do next on this action?